Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophet Samuel 1, chapter 27 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're diving right into a fascinating chapter of ancient strategy, survival, and high-stakes espionage. We are looking at a very specific, incredibly tense moment in the life of David, where pure physical exhaustion meets absolute tactical brilliance.
To really grasp what's happening in this chapter, we have to put ourselves right inside David's exhausted mind. At this point in the story, David has been relentlessly hunted by King Saul. He's been living in caves, hiding out in the wilderness, just constantly looking over his shoulder. And frankly, he's hit a breaking point. It forces us to ask a really fascinating question. What do you do when your own country becomes a literal death trap? Well, you do the unthinkable. You cross the border and seek asylum with the very people you've been fighting against.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the desperate escape plan. Then, seeking refuge in Gath, moving to Ziklag, the raids and tactical deception, and we'll wrap up with some practical life lessons.
Section 1. The Desperate Escape Plan. Verse 1. A Calculated Risk.
Right away, verse 1 gives us the raw reality of David's mental state. He basically thinks to himself, you know what, one of these days I'm going to be destroyed by the hand of Saul. He isn't waiting around for a miracle anymore. He's looking at the cold, hard facts. Let's break down his calculation. If he stays in Israel, it means inevitable death against a king who has the resources of an entire nation. So his only viable alternative is to escape to the Philistines, Israel's greatest enemies. It's a huge gamble, but he calculates that crossing that border will finally force Saul to give up the hunt.
Moving on to Section 2, Seeking Refuge in Gath. Let's look at verses 2 through 4, the relocation.
Verses 2 and 3 detail the logistics of this massive relocation. Because remember, this isn't just one guy sneaking across the border in the dead of night. David actually takes his 600 men and they go over to Achish, the king of Gath, which was a major Philistine royal city. And if we look at the composition of the group, it's highly organized. Every single man brings his household. David brings his two wives, Ahinoam and Abigail. They are seeking complete asylum. And, as verse 4 proves, his desperate gamble completely worked. When Saul is told that David fled to Gath, the hunt officially ends. Saul simply cannot risk invading Philistine territory for just one man.
Section 3. Moving to Ziklag. Verses 5 through 7, Strategic Independence.
Now David knows he can't stay under the king's direct watch forever. If he wants to maintain his own loyal fighting force, he absolutely needs some operational distance. So in verse 5, he makes this brilliant diplomatic play. He goes to Achish and says, "If I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be assigned to me in one of the country towns that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you?" It sounds so incredibly humble, right? He's playing the part of the lowly servant perfectly. But strategically, he is securing his very own independent base. Verse 6 tells us Achish actually agrees and gives him the rural town of Ziklag.
Moving his 600 men and all their families to Ziklag essentially gave David a mini-kingdom. He was finally out of the Philistine capital, totally away from the daily scrutiny of the Philistine officials. Interestingly enough, the text actually drops a fascinating historical footnote right here. It notes that because of this specific grant from Achish, Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. So David's temporary survival tactic ended up permanently redrawing the map.
So how long does this tense arrangement actually last? Well, verse 7 states very clearly that David lived in Philistine territory for exactly 1 year and 4 months. That's 16 full months. Just imagine the immense psychological toll of that. 16 months of waking up in enemy territory, managing an entire outlaw community, and playing a highly dangerous political game every single day just to keep them all alive.
Which brings us to Section 4, Raids and Tactical Deception. Let's dive into verses 8 through 12, the double life.
Now we get into the gritty details of how David actually survived day to day. Verses 8 through 12 detail an absolute masterclass in tactical deception. Verse 8 shows us his actual targets, the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. These were ancient hostile tribes living in the southern desert, longtime enemies of Israel. But here's the catch. When he brought the spoils of war back to Achish, David lied. He claimed he had attacked the Negev of Judah, the Jerahmeelites, or the Kenites. Basically, he told the Philistine king that he was actively raiding his own Israelite people and their allies.
But to pull off a lie of this magnitude, David had to be absolutely ruthless about his operational security. Verses 9 and 11 report the pretty grim reality of ancient warfare. Whenever David attacked an area, he took the livestock and the goods, but he left not a single man or woman alive to be brought back to Gath.
The text gives us his exact reasoning, quoting David, "They might inform on us and say, 'This is what David did.'" To maintain his cover and protect his 600 families, he employed a strict zero-witness policy. He had to ensure that literally no one could ever contradict his story to the Philistine king.
And the result of this extreme geographical and tactical deception? It worked flawlessly. Verse 12 gives us the actual internal thoughts of King Achish, and he completely buys the lie. He thinks to himself, "He has become so odious to his people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever." It's just incredible irony, isn't it? Achish genuinely believes David has burned all his bridges with Israel, entirely unaware that he is actively funding and protecting Israel's future king.
All right, Section 5, Practical Life Lessons. Let's talk about what we learn from all of this.
Now, obviously, we aren't fighting ancient desert skirmishes today, but the underlying principles of David's experience in Ziklag offer some very real lessons for navigating pure survival mode. First, survival often requires calculated, unorthodox strategies. When conventional methods completely fail, you sometimes just have to make a radical pivot. Second, it shows that you can find independence even in highly restrictive environments. Just as David diplomatically negotiated his way into getting Ziklag, we can sometimes carve out our own autonomy even when our backs are completely against the wall. And finally, protecting the people who depend on you requires careful, strategic positioning and just incredible, unyielding discipline.
To quickly recap, chapter 27 showed us David making the agonizing choice to leave Israel, securing the border town of Ziklag, and conducting a flawless, brutal campaign of deception. Achish currently trusts David completely, but you really have to ask yourself, how long can a person live in the camp of their enemy, playing both sides of a war, before the absolute truth finally catches up with them? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.